All right, so to continue, the 7 points of mind training, they include the preliminaries, which have been gone over. The practice of relative and ultimate bodhicitta is the second. Using adverse circumstances as the path to enlightenment. And I think Lama Yeshe will begin that one next time. And then we have essential points for living and dying. The fifth is the gauge of accomplishment. The sixth is commitments, and the seventh precepts that we do. So that's what we call the 7 points of mind training. The first 2 points are the heart of the training. These 7 points are presented, as you may know, in 59 key phrases. And these phrases are often called slogans, elaborated by Jamgon Kongtrul Lodro Thay's classic guide to Lojong entitled The Great Path of Awakening, which I'm sure has been mentioned, and an explanation of spiritual instruction from Chekawa Yeshe Dorje. So you heard from Lama Karma in the first session, the introduction, history and lineage of our Lojong tradition, and how it came to us through our lineage masters. And if you were not able to listen to that presentation in class 1, I certainly recommend that you do so. And this follows a particular progression, starting with Atisha and his travels to find his teacher, Selingpa. And this is a fascinating story. Those of you who heard Lama Karma, he brought this teaching to life. And Lama Kathy continued in class 2 the importance of studying the many different texts of Lojong, such as the 8 stanzas of thought, transformation, and 37 practices of a bodhisattva, and guide to bodhisattva's way of life. So all of these provide a complete path to awakening, beginning with the cultivation of bodhicitta, which is the essence of the teaching, is the cultivation of bodhicitta. Loving kindness and compassion, the benefit of all sentient beings. This is the path of the bodhisattva. So we next heard from Khenpo Sanjay in class 3. Khenpo La began point 1, preliminary practices of mind training, slogan 1, and the teaching on the 2 preliminaries. So these preliminaries for a session of practice and the general preliminaries. And again, if you didn't have the opportunity to listen to those at the time they were given, you can go back and listen through those. But these preliminaries, I'm sure most of you know, but just as review, the 4 thoughts that turn the mind to Dharma. These are the preciousness of this human life, this human birth that we have. The second is the inevitability of death and impermanence. And the third, the principle of karma. And the fourth, the inherent dissatisfaction and the drawbacks of samsara, wandering repeatedly through the cycle of rebirth in the 6 realms of existence. So we then kind of left the heavy lifting to Khenpo Ujin, the abbot of KTD. And this teaching covered ultimate and to some degree relative bodhicitta. This included meditation instruction for both on the cushion and post meditation off the cushion. So understanding ultimate reality is the essence of wisdom and requires time in the art of meditation. And if you haven't, again, had the opportunity to listen to these, please do so. These teachings follow one after the other and will give you greater insight on the path to awakening. So we left off in that presentation with slogan 6. And slogan 6 is, in post-meditation, be a child of illusion. So just briefly, that means the practice of Lojong, it states that the way to elevate and liberate ourselves on the spiritual path is by maintaining the perspective of this insubstantial nature of things in our everyday life, everyday activities. And if we contemplate this view properly, we will develop a very different perspective. I'll let our translator try to catch up with me. I'm sorry if I'm going too fast. So the word illusion here in this instruction doesn't imply that things are hallucinations or fabrications of the mind. It simply means that we are normally misperceive issues by making them real in our mind, or solid. We reify these things that we see and hear and feel and touch through our senses. A better way of understanding this nature of reality would be to relinquish our habit of fixation. So this is the traditional example for this is you'll often hear, for example, would be to make the mistake, to mistake a rope for a snake, for example. And when we react with fear and dread, it does not imply that the rope itself is an illusion, but rather we are simply experiencing the result of an error of perception, which we do all the time. And in a similar way, the teachings on emptiness claim that when we perceive others or things as independently existing, we are making an error of perception. And this has the potential to give rise to equally disturbing emotions. And the stronger the illusion of self and other, the greater our fixation and consequently our emotional arousal that goes with it. So applying this understanding to post-meditation situations is an adjunct to Vipassana meditation and will help us maintain a proper perspective. This is all in the part about ultimate bodhicitta. And this is called adopting the right view, which is very important. Right view and compassion are two main practices of Lojong. The right view, which is wisdom, and we are going to be talking more about the second part. The compassion are the two main practices of Lojong. So if we can maintain the perspective of absolute bodhicitta in meditation, wisdom, this will add a profound perspective to our relative bodhicitta practice, which we will be talking about more, which is called Tonglen, or the exchange of self for others. So this brings us to the tonight's fifth session in the series. And we'll be covering meditation both on the cushion and a post-meditation off the cushion daily practice. And this will cover the next 4 slogans in our Lojong practice, 7 through 10. This will include slogan 7, which is sending and taking practice should be a practice alternately. These 2 should be mounted on the breath. That is slogan 7, and that is the essence of the Tonglen practice. Slogan 8 is 3 objects, 3 poisons, 3 seeds of virtue, which we will discuss in greater detail. Slogan 9, use the slogans to train in all forms of activity. And slogan 10, begin the sequence of exchange with yourself. And this will include, again, the introduction to Tonglen. And this is the essential practice for the cultivation of bodhicitta, which is the main topic that we'll be discussing tonight. So it's great that you are here, and it is good to have the proper motivation to listen to this profound Dharma teaching series on Lojong. And also, you are fortunate to have teachers that can guide you in the practice. There is a need for a teacher, and anyone who sincerely wishes to practice these teachings must first receive the proper instruction from a qualified teacher, someone who has experience and practice and can teach it properly. So you have the good fortune of throughout this entire series, the lamas and khenpos are very knowledgeable in these in the Lojong practices. So when we train in the teachings of the 7 points of Lojong, problems will arise. Sometimes these problems can take the form of happiness and success and good times. And at other times, they can take the form of difficulties in our life. We have these things. Sometimes we're happy. Sometimes we have difficulties and are in physical, mental, emotional pain and other misfortunes. This is inevitable. This is samsara. So success becomes an obstacle when we are affluent and everything seems to be going correctly for us. And we have satisfaction and everything seems to be going well. And because of that, that causes a tendency to forget the Dharma and our Dharma practice. Because everything is fine, we forget our practice or we neglect it. So that is a problem. And this is called the obstacle of happiness. We don't usually think of happiness as being an obstacle, but indeed for our practice, it can be for the reasons we just stated. The other obstacle comes when we experience misfortune, failures, physical and mental pain. And also we can forget the Dharma because we are too caught up in the drama of being depressed and agitated and so forth. So in fact, we use these situations for lojong. We bring everything to the path. And in that way, we become even-minded so that we are neither depressed during difficulties nor carried away by success. And in this way, lojong practice lifts us during difficulties and grounds us during our success. This is just one of the ways that many benefits of the practice of lojong. So given that, we will begin our training in relative bodhicitta. Following last week's session in absolute bodhicitta, we are going to turn our attention to the main part of the practice, training in relative bodhicitta. And this has three parts. This has a preparation, this has a main practice, and a post-meditation practice. First is preparation, second is main practice, the third is post-meditation practice. So what is this mind training about? It is training in ways to make self-cherishing weaker. The cultivation of relative bodhicitta is first and foremost a method of reversing our self-cherishing attitude and changing it to one that regards the other as equal. Usually we're coming from a me first kind of position. And as the great Tibetan master Yogompa says in his instruction on taming the mind, train your thoughts to ponder others' well-being. This is the essential point. It ensures that everything you do becomes a Dharma practice. So once we generate this attitude, which is the foundation of the lojong practice, we won't need to reduce our egoism deliberately because our egoistic tendencies will naturally diminish. We need to abandon self-cherishing. In order to abandon it, we need to weaken our self-cherishing and strengthen our cherishing of others. It's not usually how we do things. So if we can do that, our goodwill towards others increases. When goodwill and care for others increases, benefit will also come to others by the force of that. And things begin to go quite well for us as well. On the other hand, if self-cherishing gets stronger, there is the danger of ill will because we're in competition. We think, oh, I want to have what's good, and I'm not so sure that the other person deserves it. Ill will cause harm to others, and consequently, harm will also come back to ourselves. It works like that. So to abandon our self-cherishing, we must first apply the antidotes. Remember from last week's teaching, we first arouse ultimate bodhicitta. As we said earlier, remember the slogan, regard all phenomena as dreams. Everything is without essence, like a dream. We contemplate the ultimate nature to decrease self-cherishing. We think that everything is essenceless. and that emptiness is an excellent way to decrease then and completely abandon self-cherishing. But when meditating on relative bodhicitta, we do not think about emptiness so much. We do not think about things like illusions or dreams. We take the position as we train in relative bodhicitta, as described by Shantideva in The Way of the Bodhisattva. He describes what bodhicitta is and how important it is. He describes how to develop bodhicitta by the methods of meditating on the equality of self and other, and meditating on the exchanging self and other. And this will be the next topic of our discussion and practice. So the first part is preparation. So the preliminary practice of relative bodhicitta is to meditate on love and compassion for all beings. But this, as you may have experienced, is not so easy. We begin by generating love and compassion towards our mother in this practice. We take the mother as the object of our love and compassion. And the way to start is to visualize our mother in front of us. I know these days it might be difficult for some of you who do not have a good relationship with your mother or to engage in this process initially, starting with the mother. But even though we may love our mother, we may get angry with her, or we may not have had a good relationship with her. However, if we think about it, our mother has been most incredibly kind by giving us our life and then sacrificing a great deal for us. Of course, sometimes our mother may become angry with us and she may have spanked us or treated us what we thought at the time as a child as unkindly. But again, we couldn't understand at the time why that might be happening. It wasn't necessarily because she didn't like us or didn't love us or had some kind of malice towards us. It may have been simply because she was protecting us, or that she was also stressed out and having a difficult time. She may not have been skillful in her method, but was acting in this way for our benefit and as a great kindness to us. So we use the mother as the object of our meditation in the beginning for cultivating love. So in this practice, we feel compassion for our mother with the thought, may she be freed from all suffering. And we show love for her with the thought, may she have complete happiness. The Lojong text on mind training gives us the oral instructions how to start with our mother and gradually extends the compassion to all the rest of beings in the world. And we extend this compassion that all beings be freed from all suffering, and that this universal love, that they possess all happiness, to the point where we regard all beings impartially with great equanimity. This is a progression of that, may all beings be happy and have the causes of happiness. So that was the preliminary preparation, to use the mother in that way and to begin our process of practicing loving kindness and compassion. Now we come to the actual meditation, which is sending and taking meditation, called Tonglen in Tibetan. So this is the main practice. You might ask, what are we sending? If we're sending and giving, receiving, we are sending all of our happiness and all the causes of happiness to living beings. That is, all the virtuous actions that we have ever done or will ever do. What we are taking in is the suffering of all sentient beings, along with the causes of that suffering, which are negative actions and disturbing emotions. Those are the causes of our suffering. So we begin with the slogan 7, as expressed in the Lojong instructions. Sending and taking should be practiced alternately. These two should ride the breath. This is Tonglen practice. So what does this mean? I think some of you certainly have heard of Tonglen and maybe been practicing Tonglen for some time. This is where it comes from. In doing Tonglen, we are trying to adopt a radically new way of looking at things. As I mentioned, Tonglen is also called exchanging oneself for others, because it involves giving away everything that is good in our lives and taking on everything that is bad in the lives of others. It is a training, and it requires courage, because the whole point of doing it is to train ourselves to be less fearful and anxious. Our capacity to feel love and compassion for others and our courage to take on their suffering will increase if our Tonglen practice is working. What this means is that when we breathe out, we imagine that all our happiness and its causes, our virtues, goes out to all sentient beings who then receive it. And as we breathe in, we imagine that all unhappiness and sorrow of sentient beings, as well as its causes, the negative karma and disturbing emotions, dissolve into ourselves. When we actually do this practice, we begin by taking refuge, contemplating the preliminaries, the 4 thoughts that turn the mind to Dharma, and resting in the natural state of shamatha. And this can be followed by vipassana meditation, a previous slogan that we mentioned, all things like a dream, and returning again to rest in that natural state of shamatha, taming the mind to make it workable. So we think of others purely in terms of their suffering, imagining the distress of illness, the pain and suffering of loss, the deprivation and affliction of poverty, the confusion and torment of mental illness, and the disabling distress of emotional conflicts. These are the things that plague all sentient beings. So then we inhale all that suffering into ourselves, and we think ourselves purely in terms of our own happiness, imagining everything that we hold dear, special moments we cherish when we experience love or intimacy, or moments when we were at ease with ourselves, and we breathe out that happiness, contentment, well-being, strength and vitality, loving kindness and compassion. And we breathe in the causes and conditions of all the sufferings of other beings, of their lives, and breathe out the causes and conditions for their happiness. So that's what that slogan means. These conflicting emotions are both the cause and the effect of our suffering, and thereby what creates the vicious cycle that we call samsara, wandering in the 6 different worlds of samsara. We include all of this within our Tonglen practice, breathing in everything that is debilitating for others, and breathing out everything that would be the cause of joy. Now, I know what you're thinking. People new to Tonglen, in particular, have many trepidations and doubts. Some people think, oh, if I do Tonglen, I'll be totally miserable because I'll always be thinking about the suffering of others. These fears are completely misplaced. It is impossible to invite misfortune and disruption into our lives through Tonglen. We can't take on another person's karma, really. That is their karma. They have the causes and conditions that have produced that karma. So it is impossible to invite that into ourselves. Nevertheless, nothing is literally given away. and nothing is literally being taken on when we do Tonglen. But we breathe in. When we breathe in, we are not afraid to take on the illness, grief, distress, sorrow, physical ailments, and mental torment of others. And we breathe out, we're not afraid to send out loving thoughts and caring attitudes to others, or to imagine that we are strong enough to be of help to them. Sometimes people think, oh, I can't do that. I don't have the capacity, the strength, the will actually to do that. When we are grateful to others for providing us the opportunity to develop these transformative abilities, we realize that we are the real beneficiaries of this practice. So to make this imagined exchange clear, as you breathe in, imagine all the negative karma like a dark smoke. And it's a collection of all the suffering and obscurations and wrongdoing of sentient beings. And it enters through your nostrils as you breathe in and absorbed into your heart. And then think that all sentient beings are forever free of that misery, the results of wrongdoing. And as you breathe out, imagine that all your happiness and virtue pour out in the form of brilliant rays of moonlight from your nostrils and absorbed by every sentient being. So this is what it means we should train in the two, giving and taking in relation to exhaling and inhaling. This makes it easier to maintain your mental focus using the breath in that way. Because the breath is readily available, it's something we have with us all the time. And this method combats other false conceptualizations. It keeps us focused, breathing in and breathing out. So with the in-breath, you take in the sufferings again, and with the out-breath, you bestow all that is good. And with great joy, think that all beings immediately attain Buddhahood, and we see them as completely enlightened Buddhists. After practicing Tonglen, we return to shamatha meditation, our tranquility meditation, and rest in that natural state. The life we return to at the end of our session is called post-meditation. Sometimes we say it's off the cushion meditation, because our everyday activities must be, ancillary to our meditation practice. We just don't want to be meditating, on the cushion and leave our practice on the cushion. We bring the mindfulness and awareness of our and the compassionate attitude of Tonglen into our everyday life. We integrate our experiences within our meditation and prayers and make aspiration for the well-being of others. And so doing, we transform our own attitudes. Our post-meditation becomes an act of aspiration. We wish all beings to be happy and have the sources of happiness, and to be removed from suffering and the sources of suffering. The concept of aspiration is unusual for many Westerners, but it's a very important to understand this very powerful psychological and spiritual technique. It's a method, it's a skillful means for the cultivation of loving kindness and compassion, bodhicitta. So the post-meditation practice is based on slogan 8. 3 objects, 3 poisons, 3 seeds of virtue. So this slogan that we can transform the objects and poisons into virtue. The 3 poisons continually arise in connection with 3 objects. Our compulsive attachment arises for objects that are pleasant or useful. or aversion arises for objects that are unpleasant or harmful and disagreeable to us. And indifference arises for neutral objects that we really don't have any feeling for. And we recognize these three poisons as soon as they arise. We're training ourselves. Again, this is mind training. Lojong means mind training. So we tend to group people into three general categories in our daily life. We have those we get along with and we care about, those who we don't get along with and we don't really care about, and those who are of no real interest to us. We don't really have a relationship with them at all. So we have great attachment and love and affection for the people we get along with, our family members, friends, lovers. And we don't want them to come to have harm. We don't want harm to come to them. And for those who we don't get along with, we have nothing but scorn and condemnation and anger, possibly, for those that we are in conflict with. And the third category comprises most people who are unknown to us. So we don't have a feeling one way or the other, or opinion about them at all. However, as we practice the 7 points of mind training, even the feeling of indifference is a form of feeling. And thus our response is not completely neutral or innocuous. These people are always potential objects of attachment or aversion. According to the Buddhist view, the people we have affection for are objects of desire. The people we have aversion for are objects of our anger. And the people who are strangers and do not interest are actually objects of ignorance. And these three objects are those three groups of people. The three poisons are represented by our desire, our anger, and our ignorance. And these three virtues are transformed into non-desire, non-anger, compassion, and loving kindness, and wisdom, non-ignorance. For example, when attachment arises in us, we can think, may every being be free of attachment and aversion. So when we feel, this attachment arising in us, we may say or think, may every being be free of attachment and aversion. We identify it in ourselves first. And until they attain Buddhahood, may they be free of all these disturbing emotions. You can see how we're transforming our mind. Through this practice, the three poisons become three limitless seeds of virtue. And if we can maintain an awareness of these three objects, we will be able to recognize that our relationship to friends, foes, and strangers does not form in a vacuum. Someone is a friend, a foe, a stranger, depending upon a variety of factors, circumstances, existing conditions, causes and conditions. So it is a very profound view to see our interpersonal relationships in this way. So you may have had the experience of friends becoming foes and foes becoming friends. It is not a fixed position. It is a very profound view to see our interpersonal relationships in this way, because no one is a friend or foe in essence. And our relationships to others can change very quickly. Someone who we considered a friend might turn into an enemy. And our enemy can just as easily turn into a friend. So while people who have never provoked any strong feelings in us can become either, they can be friend or foe, and now they may be neutral or unknown to us, but all beings have that capacity. So it is not a fixation for us to consider friend and foe in that way. So becoming aware of the shifting relationships will make it easier to develop love and compassion. It doesn't mean that certain people are not our friends while others appear as enemies. It just means that we can go beyond these temporary perceptions and labels and view all relationships as dependently originated. There are causes and conditions for all of these relationships. So keeping that dreamlike quality of everything clearly in our minds helps us to resist the habitual tendency to fixate on the substantiality and fixed positions of our relationships with others. This balance is essential to enhance our capacity to sympathize with others and gradually extend our love and compassion towards a broader range of people. First towards strangers, and then towards our enemies, or the people with whom we find it difficult to deal with. I hope this is making sense, or I'm making sense to you. We see the shifting of these relationships. It's a fluid situation. So we don't grow as human beings only through having good friends. We also grow when other people seem hell-bent on creating difficulties for us or putting obstacles in our path. In other words, we don't develop virtues in the absence of vices. We develop virtues by dealing with our vices, which is why this kind of meditation is so important. We are transforming our minds. We may still have difficulties dealing with our attachments, our anger, our indifference in everyday life. But if we try to deal with them in a positive way during our meditation, we will sow the seeds of virtue. So again, the main portion of this mind training practice is concerned with bodhicitta, and it refers to the desire to help all sentient beings achieve complete happiness. That's what we want for them. The term sentient beings, refers to all beings who have a mind. So this includes animals as well as beings we cannot see in any of the 6 realms of existence. There are said to be 2 kinds of bodhicitta, as we mentioned, relative bodhicitta and absolute bodhicitta. And there is an analogy for the cultivation of bodhicitta or enlightened heart. And traditional Mahayana analogy for success on the spiritual path requires 2 wings to accomplish the result, just as a bird needs 2 wings to fly. And the wings of wisdom and compassion are necessary to achieve the goal. So we could compare the direct realization of absolute bodhicitta to our wisdom and mind, and relative bodhicitta as the cultivation of compassion, having a compassionate heart, a caring heart. And we may think that absolute bodhicitta is more important than relative bodhicitta, but for beginners like us, it is taught that relative bodhicitta is most important. We have to develop this loving kindness and compassion. So in the texts, in the series of teachings, we begin with a brief discussion of bodhicitta. And again, that was presented last week by our abbot at KTD, Khenpo Rinchen. And this teaching is also from Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche. This entire sequence of teachings is called Dharma Paths, and I definitely recommend the book Dharma Paths by Khenpo Rinpoche as a source for you in cultivating bodhicitta. And he also talks about Tonglen in his book, Dharma Paths. And we have previously investigated in previous lecture series the training in shamatha meditation, the basic meditation for establishing tranquility and its many other benefits. And with consistent practice, we acquire calmness and clarity of mind, as well as a sense of mental precision. We can make the mind workable, and we have attention. we talk about mindfulness. This is the cultivation of mindfulness. So with consistent practice, we acquire calmness and clarity of mind, as well as a sense of mental precision. And as we work with this technique, we will begin to appreciate the qualities that are developed from it. So the Bodhisattva Sutra says, give yourself to others, and contains stories of how bodhisattvas, Buddhas in training, gave everything to benefit others. But we are not asked to give blindly. We give out of the kindness of an open, loving heart. And to further develop and integrate the skillful means on the path, this resulting openness and firm grounding cultivated with basic meditation practice is indispensable and will aid us in fulfilling our potential for greater sanity and wakefulness. But there's still more for us to do. We tame the mind through shamatha, but the key point of the exercise is not just having the willingness to take on the suffering of others, but using that to transform our own poisons into the corresponding seeds of virtue through the force of our aspirations. And the main practice for developing this letting go is called Tonglen. The ancient meditation focuses on compassion. So it is a relatively simple practice, as I mentioned. And so the practice of Tonglen is simple. We imagine that as we are exhaling, we are sharing our happiness, love, health, and compassion, and their causes with everyone. And as we inhale, we imagine taking away their suffering and the causes of suffering in its myriad forms. So while its roots are Buddhist, in recent years, Tonglen meditation has found receptive audiences in spiritual development to everything from spiritual development to therapeutic benefits. In secular understanding, you'll see it in popular psychology. Its popularity is somewhat surprising given how different it is from our usual focus of our me first society. And as it turns out, the most powerful ways to be kind to yourself and create the causes of happiness in the future are by developing the strong intention and motivation to help others. And people from all walks of life have found Tonglen very beneficial for cultivating loving kindness and compassion. This is the motivation of all the bodhisattvas. That's what what Tonglen means. It's a Tibetan term and translates as sending and taking. And this belongs to this body of wisdom called Lojong. Lo being mind and Jung mean training. So mind training. And it is a supreme psychology. And we could say this mind training is considered one of the most important teachings in Buddhism. And Tonglen is a special application of mind training practice. It is a skillful means to cultivate bodhicitta and learn how to be less self-centered and selfish. And our meditation trains the mind to be more loving and compassionate. So in addition to an intellectual understanding of bodhicitta, we're giving the framework here as kind of intellectual understanding from the teachings. It is important to cultivate the experience directly. So we'll have a little time to practice. And the following exercise will help give birth to bodhicitta, the mind of enlightenment. So if you have questions, you just jot them down and we'll have a little time towards the end to answer any questions, at least a few questions that may have arisen in your mind during the course of this presentation. So I do want it to be somewhat interactive, as I mentioned, and we'll have an opportunity to address some of those. So Tonglen, if we look at the Tonglen meditation overview of practice, Tonglen practice begins, as we've said, with the breath awareness and continues with the wish to establish all beings in happiness and free from suffering. So it is an easy meditation to say, but not always so easy to do. So there are many different versions of this practice, traditional and modern. And the simplest form is simply connecting your motivation and the breath. So again, just to review, as you inhale, you breathe in the discomfort, unhappiness, pain, and distress and their causes. And you imagine that when you exhale, you share the light of happiness and health and well-being and their causes. Soothing rays of healing light fill the entire world with their benevolent healing power. On the out breath, you're sending out all your well-being. So when breathing in, imagine you are breathing in the dark, smoky light cloud representing the suffering of sentient beings. The darkness is transformed by your positive intention and the natural goodness of your heart. And then send out the healing love, compassion, and all that is needed and wanted in the form of brilliant light that enters the person or people, or making them very happy and satisfying all their needs. And in doing Tonglen is often practiced in stages. After settling the mind again in meditation, we choose an object of compassion, a person, an animal, a group. We breathe in the smoky darkness of that specific distress, imagining the object of our meditation as relieved of all difficulties, whatever they may be. We breathe out the soothing light of compassion. It touches the object of compassion, bringing comfort and peace. And this is followed by a phase of expanding the visualization to others who experience similar distress and expanding it yet out again to the farthest reaches of the multiverse until all suffering is alleviated and all goodness is shared with all beings. So again, the emphasis of Tonglen, its benefits. Tonglen, minimizes and gradually uproots the conflicting emotions of our self-clinging and engages us physically, mentally, emotionally, and verbally in developing tolerance and patience and compassion and loving kindness. Our renowned teacher, Kepakata Rinpoche, explains that he has said, enlightened beings have reached enlightenment by working for the benefit of all sentient beings. Beings remain in samsara, suffering, because they are working for themselves alone. By letting go of this selfishness, we work to benefit others rather than working merely to benefit ourselves. This altruistic attitude is the source of our future happiness. So again, the essential 7 points of mind training is the cultivation of bodhicitta. And this principal way of doing this is through the practice of Tonglen. So as I mentioned, I know as we're going through this, you may again have some doubts about, now you're thinking, well, when people first are introduced to this practice, the reactions are usually strong. And when I've taught this in the past, I have had people say, what virtually everybody is thinking again, that they will say, but what if I'm doing this with someone who is really sick and I start to get sick myself? And as Khenpo Rinpoche, I've heard Khenpo Rinpoche say, oh, that's wonderful. You should think, oh, good, it's working. So, however, we cannot at our level, really, as I mentioned, take on the karma of someone else. That is their karma. But we can cultivate the aspiration to do so. And that is the bodhicitta training of the bodhisattva. Tonglen is designed to cut the ego self-concern, self-promotion, or self-defense against everybody and everything. And it's exchanges ourself for other, and thus is profoundly undercuts that subject-object dualism. So what you'll find is that you stop recoiling in the face of suffering, both yours and others, and you stop running from pain, and instead find that you can begin to transform it by simply being willing to take it on yourself and then release it. The real changes start to happen in you by simply your willingness to get your ego protecting tendencies out of the way. You begin to relax the self-other dichotomy. This is why the positive side of Tonglen is expressed in the saying, I rejoice in the merit of others. It's the same as a mind resting in non-dual awareness. A great equality consciousness develops, which undercuts pride and arrogance on the one hand and fear and envy on the other. So Tonglen invites us to undermine this self-other dualism at exactly the point we are most afraid, getting hurt ourselves. Not just talking about having compassion for other suffering, but willing to take it on into our own heart and release the suffering in exchange. This is true compassion. This is the path of the Mahayana and the Bodhisattva vow to benefit all sentient beings. So we are now 1 hour into our teaching, and I think that maybe we should just do a little guided meditation in this way. So sit comfortably, and I will take you through a little meditation practice. So sit comfortably, spine straight. We'll begin for just a short shamatha meditation practice. We begin with shamatha meditation, maintaining your awareness of the breath as you breathe in. Be present and aware that you are breathing in. As you breathe out, just be aware that you're breathing out. Be mindful of any distracting thoughts and emotions as soon as they arise, and just bring your awareness back to the breath. So we do this a few times when we begin our Tonglen practice, settling the mind. And now link your intention to the breath. On the exhale, breathe out the light of your basic goodness and wish to benefit suffering beings. And with that, you alleviate the pain and suffering by sending out loving kindness and compassion. And breathe in the smoky darkness of unhappiness and suffering in all its myriad forms into your heart, where it is transformed into light. And you can do this 3, 6, 9 times. We'll just do it maybe 3 times. So again, link your intention to the breath. On the exhale, breathe out the light of your basic goodness, all of your virtue, and your wish to benefit suffering beings. And with that, you alleviate the pain and suffering by sending out loving kindness and compassion. And when you're breathing in, you imagine a smoky darkness of unhappiness and suffering, pain, and all its myriad forms again into your heart, where it's transformed into light. And then breathe out that light, happiness, joy, health, happiness. Transforming that person, bringing them happiness, peace. inhaling the smoky darkness of unhappiness and whatever form of suffering may be for them. And extend your meditation to others who are scared, fearful, agitated. Breathe in their distress and breathe out happiness and peace. Imagine their distress is resolved. See them in joy and happiness and the Buddhas that they truly are. And then expand this goodwill and imagine it reaching the far limits of space. Again, we are only limited by the scope of our imagination and our motivation. Allow your heart and natural goodness to shine unreservedly and touch the world with its blessing of love, compassion, and wisdom. There are many examples of this. I have used it on many occasions. I sometimes use the example of when I was flying. There was a mother and her young child in the aisle across from me, and we were about to take off, and the child was frightened, anxious, and crying. And the mother was trying her best to calm the child without much success and was becoming frustrated and irritated herself. And in this situation, I began doing Tonglen meditation, inhaling the fear and panic and anxiety of the child that she was feeling, and the irritation of the mother was experiencing, and breathing out calm, serenity, tranquility, peace to both. And the child almost immediately began to calm down, and consequently, so did the mother. So it doesn't always work that way, but it has worked that way many times. And it certainly seemed to bring peace and ease to the mother and the child. And having done this many times with good results, I can say that try it. You know, in situations where there's conflict or agitation or a variety of negative emotions or suffering and all, again, its myriad forms. Using the breath as the means for breathing out and breathing in. Breathing out all the joy, happiness, healing light, and breathing in the smoky colored dissatisfaction, fears, negative emotions of all kinds, suffering at all levels, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. And extending that goodwill, love, and peace, imagining it covers and envelops the entire country, then all countries, nations, people of the world. Imagine extending it further and further beyond the limits of space. So again, you use this as a skillful means, not just when you're sitting on the cushion in meditation. It can also be part of your life. Wherever you go and whatever you are doing, you can offer any activity for the benefit of others at work, at home, while eating or engaged in activity. For example, when you're taking a walk, you can review this thought in your mind. May all beings experience happiness. When you inhale, think, may all beings be relieved of suffering. When you exhale, may I give others comfort and happiness. So this becomes a natural expression of the mind of enlightenment. You can practice Tonglen with every breath. This attitude takes time to develop, but as it goes against our old habits and tendencies to think only of ourselves and our happiness. But this training of a bodhisattva and the essence of the Mahayana path, we are training the mind in this way. And so we will see the uprising of our own emotions. When training the mind as beginners, we will still have disturbing thoughts ourselves. Our Tonglen and other practices will help us learn how to handle them, how we can practice this. So we remain mindful. We apply mindfulness. For example, the moment we are aware that we are experiencing anger or some conflicting emotion, we think, may my experience of this anger be transformed to benefit all sentient beings. And may all sentient beings be free of this disturbing emotion. So the emotion itself is not positive. Our anger is certainly not positive, but the way you have handled it is positive. The skillful means helps to foster positive feelings and to think of the welfare of others. And that brings us to slogan 9. Use these slogans to train in all forms of activity. So these pithy sayings, in our daily activities can help us steer our minds in the right direction. So we really should try to memorize, actually, these 59 slogans, and we can bring them up at the appropriate time as an antidote to various things. So we should try to memorize, as many slogans as possible, not just the ones that are included in the Lojong manual. There are many different slogans, but certainly these the Lojong slogans are wonderful. For example, Jamgon Kongtrul Rinpoche quotes Shantideva, who is famous for his pithy sayings. And he says, while their suffering ripens in me, may all my virtue ripen in them. It's a simple thought, but that is training in the exchange of self for others in this way, the cultivation of bodhicitta. So it's not a matter of just saying these slogans. Once we've developed some familiarity with them, we have to use them to bring about real change in our habitual patterns. Our thoughts and words can have a positive or a negative impact on us, depending on their content. So we really think about these slogans and understand their profound subtleties. They will help to maintain our bodhicitta attitude and interrupt our negative flow of thoughts. We cannot underestimate the power of these things. Every time we remember a slogan, it will automatically help us not to react to the things in our habitual way of doing things. So this particular slogan, number 9, this particular slogan is essentially about the concept of rejoicing. It is very easy to harp on the negative. For instance, whenever something bad happens in our world, the media considers that newsworthy. Yet many good things happen all the time and we never get to hear about them. Good news is no news, in the media. In the newspaper business, I think they say if it bleeds, it leads. So bad news seems more appealing, perhaps because it makes our own bad news life seem more tolerable. And often, we say, what is the saying that misery loves company? But often we can't help ourselves. If we hear some good news involving somebody who might have suddenly come into a sum of money, found love, received a work promotion, we automatically think, well, he's not deserving as I am, and we resent, that person's good fortune. The last thing we do is rejoice in it. This is something that we can use these slogans properly. We'll only have to invoke the relevant slogan to find ourselves rejoicing in their happiness. And if we can feel happy for others at their good fortune, we are learning to be happy ourselves. And it is a choice we make to be happy or to be competitive and jealous and negative and angry. That's a choice. So this is one of the key strategies. We actually create misery for ourselves in reaction to the happiness of others. And when we change our reaction to a positive one, we'll be able to share in their happiness instead of cutting ourselves off from their joy and experience the same joy that they do. This is how we overcome our negativities and how this practice can be beneficial to our own as well as others' well-being. So, as Buddhists, we say that everything we think, feel, and do will result in karmic imprints. So the kind of imprint we leave in our minds through meditation are extremely important because they redirect the mind in a positive way. That's why we need to think about these slogans and burn their message deeply into our minds. We must think and look at this self-talk that can become a constant negative internal dialogue. So we look at that. This is a form of mental conditioning as well. And the Buddha says, as we think, we become. So we talk to ourselves all the time, but often it is just a form of negative feedback. And these exercises will help to correct that attitude and transform them. The last slogan for tonight is number 10. Begin the sequence of exchange with yourself. So we tend to live in a self-obsessed state. If we're honest with ourselves, you will see that. And we don't free ourselves. If we don't free ourselves from this self-obsession, we will remain stuck in the painful emotional states we've created for ourselves. And it is a choice. If we want to evolve, we need to break out of this unwholesome point of view. We can't really experience someone else's pain or suffering, but we can try to imagine it. And we do know pain. We've experienced pain and suffering. And this is how we become transformed. Exchanging self for others is a way of strengthening our self-confidence and establishing ourselves in a more genuine and authentic way of being. The real way to build a sense of well-being in the world is to love and be loved by others. So we must recognize the interdependence of our samsaric identities, and we will never achieve genuine happiness and self-confidence if it is dependent and focused upon maintaining an identity that doesn't really exist. So in conclusion, we can begin our meditations on absolute and relative bodhicitta by taking refuge, meditating on the preliminaries, those 4 thoughts that turn the mind to Dharma, resting in the natural state in shamatha meditation, contemplating vipassana or resting or seeing the mind of enlightenment in that way, and then return to rest in the natural mind, have the direct experience of our Buddha nature. And we practice Tonglen from the perspective of natural state. And then we come back to rest in it again at the conclusion of our sending and taking practice. We finish the meditation session by reflecting on the 3 poisons and exchanging ourselves for others. Then if we have time, you can contemplate the other slogans, go over them again and again, thinking about their meaning and the commentaries you have read about them. So these Lojong teachings we practice as we continue to expand our mental horizons, capacities, and resilience. This is a practice that you can use as your primary practice at home. This is mind training, just like when we go to the gym and we do physical training to strengthen our muscles. Here we are extending our capacity of love and compassion, and it is a way of reconditioning the mind and gradually overcoming our negative tendencies and building our mental muscle. So this concludes our teaching on relative bodhicitta. Next week, Lama Yeshe will continue our practice of relative bodhicitta, with the third of the 7 points of mind training, transforming adversity into the path of awakening. And this will include instructions on how to train our minds amid unfavorable and unwanted circumstances in our life. And we have been born into an imperfect world characterized by unpredictability and adversity. And as Buddhas in training, we know human beings do have foibles. We make mistakes. We get confused. And sometimes we get quite irrational. So this will be taken up next week. And I hope you continue your training. And if you haven't listened to the previous teachings, please go back and listen to them all. In fact, even if you have listened to them, there's no harm in listening to them again. So thank you for your attention and for being part of this KTD program entitled Dharma Paths. And I wish you the very best in your practice of Lojong. And now we have a few minutes for questions and answers, and then we will have, after the Q&A, we'll dedicate the merit. So you can, how would be best, Yongtan, to do this?
If you'd like to ask a question, we ask you to put it into the chat. Make sure it is addressed to everybody, and we will then share that with Lama Losang, and then I'll bring the Chinese translation group in with us so that they can participate in this as well. So. Okay, Lama Mark, you should be with us now.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, so if anybody has a question, please put it into the chat, and I will read it unless it's in Chinese.
No questions.
No questions so far.
Well, you've either understood all of it or none of it. I'm not sure which. I hope you understood what I was trying to get across to you.
Looks like there are no questions.
All right, then we can dedicate the merit if that is the case.
Okay.
没有问题，所以我们现在做这个回向。
We just had a question come in. It's hard for me to imagine visually taking in so much suffering on a single breath. Do you have any suggestions?
Well, we know that we are taking in the suffering of others, and we're using the visualization of the dark smoke. Sometimes you can accentuate that with kind of a tarry kind of substance that you're breathing in. It's not something that, so with all of that smoke contains all of it. So it is just the smoke you're inhaling and understanding that within that is all of those negative emotions, the conflict, and all those things that are being purified are coming in. So just all you have to do is consider it within that smoky visualization, breathing in the smoke, dark smoke. Does that answer the question?
I think so. Lama Mark, do you want to translate?
OK，所以这个问题是关于说，有人提到用一次的这个呼吸，能够把别人的所有的痛苦，还有痛苦的因都能够吸进来吗？ OK，那拉玛 Losang 的回答说，事实上我们在这个观想中是把所有的痛苦呢，都把它集合成一种黑色的光，然后吸入我们的鼻孔，然后呢，用这种观想呢，来用这个黑光呢代替所有的这个别人的痛苦，就可以了。老师。
And along with that, when you're breathing out the light, it's like moonlight, cool, soft, penetrating the individual or the object of our meditation and pacifying all that negativity, all of that sorrow and the suffering as a brilliant light, cooling the passions and bringing peace and well-being to the individual.
然后呢，在我们吸出去的时候，把这个气吐出去的时候，我们观想成是一个白色的，这个像月光一样的很舒适的光。那这个光呢，碰到每一个众生，让每个众生都感受到这种快乐、平和、宁静等等种种的这种舒适的这种感受。老师。
There was a follow-up to which you just answered about breathing out. There's another question. Should you breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth?
It's all through the nose.
再来一个问题是，是不是吸的时候是用鼻子吸，吐的时候用嘴巴？那拉玛罗上说是吸和吐都是用鼻子。老师。
So I said individuals, but we're really doing this for all sentient beings, and it can be animals too. Even if you have a sick animal, you can do Tonglen for them as well, or for someone who's passed into the bardo or passed some other time. They are still somewhere, and you can do Tonglen for them as well in the same way.
再来就是除了我们人以外呢，其实我们的对境可以是狗啊等等的畜生，或者说是已经死的，或者是已经在中阴的这些众生，都是我们可以做这个自他交换法的一种对象。老师。
We got another question. Feel like my out-breath merit is insufficient, but my aspiration is immense. Is the focus on aspiration okay instead of my merit?
Absolutely. Your aspiration is perfectly okay, and that will add to your merit as well. So congratulations, you're increasing your merit by your aspiration.
再来就是说我感觉说我们在呼吸的时候，我好像是他的这个祈愿呢是很强的，可是我吐出去的时候，我感觉好像这个我的福德不够。那其实拉玛罗上说，其实你的这个祈愿是很强大的。当你在吐出去的时候，你的感觉，但是就是因为你的这个祈愿很强大，所以你的感觉、你的福德一样是会增长的。
This is also called aspiration bodhicitta. We have the aspiration. Really, we can't do Tonglen completely until we're Buddhists, and we have that complete mind set. But we are cultivating that process through our practice of Tonglen. So the aspiration is perfectly, is exactly what we're cultivating.
然后拉玛罗上说，事实上在这里面呢，我们真正在训练的就是我们的这种就是这个菩提心，就祈愿众生的这个痛苦呢，受到我们这个这种心愿，带众生受苦的这种心愿。老师。
Okay. There's a question in Chinese there, Lama Mark, from Ada.
Okay, it says black smoke, but I think Lama Losang says it's a black light, something like that. I think it's probably
No, black smoke is fine. Yeah, inhaling the black smoke as all of that negative causes and conditions as a black smoke, and exhaling out a kind of a moon, like a full moon, white, cool light that pacifies and comforts the individual in all its myriad ways.
他是意思说用黑烟也可以，然后出去的时候就是白色的这种白光，但是是很 凉爽的这种光照到每一个人身上。老师，
Okay, we have one more question
All
with
right,
you
we'll
at
do
this
one
point.
more. Yep.
Yep. It's when doing Thonglen for a specific person, should you get permission from that person first?
It's not necessary to do that. You are going to improve their well-being. They don't understand Tonglen, so it might be very difficult for you to even express what you're doing. But if you're holding them in that position of benefit, and that is your aspiration, you will be of benefit to them. And if you are in contact with them, and if you wish to ask them if they want you to do Tonglen for them, that's fine. But it may even be someone who has passed away, or for an animal, and you don't need their permission.
那这个问题是说，我们在做这个自他交换法的时候，是不是如果对境是一个人，那是不是需要取得他的许可？那Lama Losang意思是说不需要的。例如说有些人已经过世了，或者他可能是一个动物，那你当然不可能得到他们的允许。所以在这种情况下面，当然你如果说有些人你想要得到他们的允许，你是可以，但是完全是不需要的。老师。
All right, I think we'll end there, and we will do our dedication of merit, please.
And the timing is perfect because that was the last question.
Very good. So we're going to do this in the English. Karmapa, embodiment of the compassion of all Buddhas. Karmapa, union of the activity of all Buddhas. Karmapa, empowered as regent of all Buddhas. Ujin Drudel Jinle, may your life be long. By this merit, may we attain omniscience, defeat the enemy wrongdoing, and free all wanderers soon from the ocean of existence, churned by the great waves of birth, age, sickness, and death. I fully dedicate all this virtue, following my training, the knowledge of the warrior mentor Sri, in the same way that of Samantabhadra and all the others. Through the inspiration of the attainment of the Buddhist Trikaya, of the unchanging truth of suchness, and of the undivided intent of the Sangha, may these aspirations be fulfilled as they were made. Karmapa, you who are the activity of all Buddhas, victorious over the four Maras, may your teachings, this essence of Dharma, continuously spread to the limit of all directions, greatly increase, and always flourish auspiciously. Thank you, everyone, for your attention. I wish you the best until we meet again. Good night.